Hey guys, so my house is an absolute pigsty right now because I'm about to move house, so I'm pre-packing. I'm getting everything organised for the move, so I've got boxes lying everywhere and I have gaming systems everywhere as well, which got me thinking, what is the best way to play older games, retro games, games which are not in this current generation? Because there's a lot of ways to play older games. You can play a lot of games now even in the browser, or you can use something like a Raspberry Pi. But a lot of people say that you should always use the original console to get the authentic experience. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. And I want to just show you some of the systems that I've got lying around just now because they're kind of all around, they're all on display right now. So I'll start off with this. This is the Raspberry Pi 3B. This is the older version. There's now a newer version, Raspberry 4, which is a little bit more powerful. But using even the Raspberry 3B, which is really cheap, you can put Emulation Station onto this RetroPie, and you can play pretty much every system, every single video game system up to like the mid-90s. So all the systems from the 70s and 80s and kind of early 90s, you can play it on this, and it works really well. And you can use your PlayStation 4 controller or Xbox controller or a third-party controller as well. Kind of struggles when you get to PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, etc. But there are other ways that you can play emulated games as well, as I'm sure you're aware. So you can see my main PC up there, and you can see Call of Duty Warzone there. And you can use a PC, as you know, Emulation Station and other applications as well, to play retro games. That's an option, but you don't have to spend that much on a top system. You can use something like this. This is just a few hundred. It's a mini PC. It's got a Celeron, Intel Celeron CPU, and it doesn't even have a GPU. It's just integrated graphics, but that can handle retro games very, very well. And then you've got something like this. This is the SNES Mini, which I'm sure you're all aware of. That can play SNES games. And then you've got the Mega Drive Mini, the Genesis Mini, and that's sitting over there as well. All of these things can be used to play retro games. You can also play older games, officially on like the PlayStation 4. I've got the Wii U there, and if I look down here, you might be able to see the PlayStation 3 hiding in the background. The original PlayStation 3 sitting in the background, which if I zoom in, you can see it there in all its glory. So there's a lot of ways to play older games. I mean, you can even mod things like the PS3 as well. It's not something I've done, but it is an option. And you can play retro games in handhelds as well. I've got, in this for example, I've got a flash card. This has got thousands of games on it. That's another emulation device. And I've got the PSP, I've got that full of games right up to the PSP, PlayStation 1 games and all that on that as well. So there's lots of ways to play emulated games, but for a lot of people, they want to play the original console. And this is my original SNES, as you can see from all the Street Fighter 2 stickers, Super Tennis. These are the games that I bought when I was a kid, and these cost about £50–60 when I bought them. They were not cheap. Well, that was clearly one that I bought from a rental place, second hand. Kevin Keegan's Player Manager. So many classics here. So yeah, you can see, and I've got a converter to play international games, American, Japanese games. So you can see my Nintendo, what have I got there? PS3 games. I've got 3DS games, Nintendo Wii U. I've probably got a few Switch games there as well. I don't have my Switch here today. There's a Wii U controller. There's a Nintendo Switch box and the boxes for the Mini, NES and SNES. But you can see that, the most obvious thing is that all of these systems and all of these games take up so much more room. Well, if you thought my office was messy, look at this. This is what my living room looks like right now. And this is the laptop that I use most days to work, to actually write articles and things. But I've got my Alienware gaming laptop as well. That's got a 2080. That's really powerful. It can play most games. It's really, really good. 32 gigabytes of RAM and whatnot. Very, very good. And yes, that can play emulated games or official games. But if I go around here, well, you can see a lot more of my collection. I've got most of the original boxes that, of the systems that I bought over the years. I've got the Super Nintendo, Street Fighter 2 package there, upside down, but we've got it. Nintendo GameCube, got original controller boxes. Underneath there, is that a Sega Saturn? I believe it is. Yes, it is. We've got a Sega Saturn box there as well. So you can see I've got a lot of the original consoles that I played over the years. What have we got here? Nintendo 64. So this box has got all my original Nintendo 64 games. And here, what have we got? We've got GameCube. So I've got GameCube. What have we got? PlayStation 2. I can't even see half of them because it's kind of been hidden. And over here we've got the Nintendo 64 controllers. Down here we've got the Atari 2600. You should be able to see that there. It's in there, Atari 2600. So that's the first console I ever played. And if we look down to the bottom there, we've got Dreamcast and Saturn and, well, a lot of other things. Now, I'm not going to show you everything in these boxes just now. I don't have the time and I would have to organise everything. But when I move house, I am thinking about maybe putting these on display or just bring them out so that I can play them more often. But you can see that all these things do take up a lot of room. I keep saying it, but they do. I mean, that's several boxes worth right there. Another box that has to be boxed. Boxes and boxes. So, as you saw there, I do have most of the original consoles that I grew up with and I bought during my teenage years and early 20s, etc. I have most of the original games and the cables, accessories, and even the boxes for the controllers as well. And I've always held on to them because I do love the original consoles. I do love playing it in that way. But the sad reality is that when you get older, you have to be a little bit more practical. And the practicality for me, the reality is for me, is that when I move to my new house, I am going to have an office that's the same size as this, but connecting all of these systems up in order to play games can be a pain. Now, I'm sure you've watched a lot of YouTubers online who have set up all these consoles, but it does require having like 7 or 8 systems set up and then you plug in the cables. And I always wanted to get that, but it does take up a lot of room, and even displaying the games and the controllers do take up a lot of room as well. And then there's time. When you get older, time is a big factor in your life because you've got other responsibilities, which is why, you know, I like the Raspberry Pi and why I like things like the Mini SNES, and because it's cool. But yeah, that's why I love things like the Mini SNES and the Mini Genesis Mega Drive as well. And I'm kind of torn because being practical, it makes more sense for me to use my PC or a laptop to use RetroPie and Emulation Station and just emulate all of these great games. But there's just something about playing with the original console and the original cartridge and the original controller. Just something, I'm not going to say magical about it, that sounds really cheesy, but there is something great about just playing the original system in the way that it was intended, and there's no bugs, there's no emulation issues, it's just great. So let me know what you think, guys. I'm someone who likes both. I do like emulation. I do use emulation in the retro consoles that I've got, the handhelds. I do love playing older games on handheld consoles, but I do love the original games as well. I've never actually went into buying older games, though. I've not become a collector. One, because it takes up a lot of time to investigate games, and the other reason being that there's a lot of fakes out there. There's a lot of fake games. Certainly now, you know, all the games being flooded from China and you just don't know what you're buying. So that's always kind of put me off from becoming a collector as well. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, guys. I do not have a definitive answer on what's better. I'm not saying either or is better. I can see the pros and the cons of both as far as money and time and simplicity goes. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and in the future, once I get settled, I'd like to show you some of these older consoles. Until then, thanks for watching and take care.